Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Now, I had originally recorded this video as a standard first impression, but unfortunately the gameplay is of a type that requires a decent amount of concentration, and I was worried that my commentary throughout the video would be completely inadequate to relate the game's mechanics, so I thought I would step aside and tell you about the game in a more of a review style, even though, please bear in mind, this is very much a first impressions video. So this is DESYNC, a first-person shooter by the Foregone Syndicate and published by Adult Swim Games. And I have to admit, Adult Swim Games is starting to win a little bit of a reputation for themselves in my eyes, because the last game I reviewed that was published by them was Rise and Shine, a fantastic 2D shooter game with a wonderful art style, interesting characters, and a really funny story arc. I loved it. DESYNC, being a first-person shooter, is difficult. It can and it will kill you. It makes no apologies for horribly murdering you as often as it possibly can. So, fair warning, if you're looking for a casual experience, this is not it. DESYNC is a first-person single-player game that is realistically right up my alley. I'm not the best at these kind of games, but I'm definitely slightly more than passable in most cases, and I still die a lot more than I normally would in other FPS games of this type when dealing with the AI. It's punishing in some areas. One false move and you will find yourself facing the wrong end of a Tron-style Minotaur's hammer and get crushed into pixelated paste. Now, the art style itself is a fantastic minimalized neon polygonal mode that I found to be quite interesting. However, the game is fond of visual shifts, including a deliberate blurring and color shifting that actually hurt my eyes a little bit, so I'm not going to be thanking them for that. But the combat, though. The combat is intriguing in its own right. Now, being this is a first impression, I definitely haven't uncovered everything the game has to offer by way of firearms or anything, But from the two that you get early on, it's fairly evident that the different guns are designed for different types of enemies and abilities. Your starter weapon has a high rate of fire, and its secondary ability stuns opponents, while the second weapon you get is a much slower rate of fire but higher damage per hit shotgun style weapon that is ideally suited to blasting the bosses and Minotaur creatures you face during the early levels. Each weapon contains a certain amount of charge that slowly replenishes and does serve as a sort of resource maintenance mechanic in that role to a certain extent, forcing you to get comfortable with weapon switching fairly often, which that will also allow you to come up with new and interesting combos to help boost your score. It's also worth noting that unless you already know the spawn locations of each wave of enemies within a certain area, you will have to be constantly in motion. But conversely, once you memorize the spawn locations for each wave, your runs will be much simpler, as unfortunately those are static and unchanging no matter how many times you make the run. But overall, it does offer a good challenge. There's tons of levels, as well as weapon and special abilities upgrades that allow you to customize to your playstyle. Unfortunately, this is a single-player only experience, even though there are leaderboard scores, and for those that enjoy a speedrun-style combat system where score based on time and combos matters, this game would be right up your alley. However, those that are looking for a meaningful story should probably look elsewhere. I didn't really see much outside of a few sentences that could allude to a story, but I got the feeling not much thought was put into that aspect, as it really wasn't the main focus of the game. Now, that said, I've had a blast with the game so far, and I look forward to challenging myself further to see what other levels and other interesting designs this game has to offer. So I think that in this instance, DESYNC is indeed worthwhile for its $15 asking price. Now, I could easily see a dozen or more hours of gameplay coming out of this, at least for me. But let me know what you think, if you're interested in these types of games and what you like or dislike about them. I'm always looking for more fuel for long diatribe-style discussions, as so many seem to enjoy. And while you're doing that, don't forget to hit those like and share buttons. If you're new to the channel, please remember to subscribe. It does help out a lot more than you might think. Each new subscriber brings us one step closer to that magical 35,000 number that we're shooting for. And if you feel like supporting the channel even more than that, feel free to head over to my Patreon as well as my Twitter or Facebook. Links will be in the description down below. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.